All right, everybody, welcome to SPP. We're going to talk about, I never say welcome to SPP. I say that welcome to Smart Artist. I say welcome to the Entrepreneur's Almanac. I never welcome anybody here. I just like, hey, we're starting, and worst show ever. Like usually the words are "fuck off" that begin the show. Actually, not literally, but no, welcome, I guess. So today we're going to be talking about. I would say that to make this a little more globally, using like cultural anchors in storytelling is maybe a good way to look at this. Sean and I just wrote a book that uses friends as sort of our cultural shorthand, but I think that the lesson is a little more global than that. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, actually, I'll talk about it more when we get to the actual topic in the book. But yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think that. Except for Logan, most people love Friends and have seen Friends, and I think that's what makes it special. It's because it's not that it's Friends; it's that you pick something that most of the world can understand, and then it's shorthand. Like it could
Especially
just be
if you have a collaborator and you can use it as shorthand between you.
Yeah, I mean, I am not your father, or I am your father is cultural shorthand. Like whether you've seen Star Wars or not. So yeah, we'll talk much more about that.
Yeah,
but
I just got a text from Logan that Marta Kaufman is banging on his door demanding entry. She's really pissed at him. All right, so something cools.
Dave's been like Dave had two last time, but we made him wait.
Dave's ejaculating with something cools. Look at him go.
Yeah. My next one is also something that doesn't come out till next year, unfortunately, and that is the new movie Logan, which is
speaking of Logan.
Yeah, it's all about Logan Rutherford.
It's all about how he doesn't like Friends.
I'm coming out next year. It's based, and I didn't read this comic. Basically, it's based on the comics Old Man Wolverine, which takes place I think 50 years in the future, when basically all the good guys are dead, all the mutants are dead, and he's become a pacifist, and he's out hiding in the middle of nowhere, and then Professor X comes to him with this little girl needing her to be protected, and that's just like The Professional. So it's like X-Men meets The Professional, it looks like, and the trailer is just fucking awesome. It looks like such a good movie. The trailer gives away like everything pretty much, but it's still an awesome looking movie. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. The tone on that is fantastic, and James Mangold is a really good director too. And I feel like the last Wolverine movie he also did, and it was the best so far. I mean, not that was hard to do because there was Origins before that. But James Mangold's really good. I think he made Proof of Life for sure. He made Walk the Line. He's just done some real solid work. And this just looks like it looks like I know this is going to be the last Wolverine movie, and it looks like it's taking that seriously.
Yeah, and
did you know that there's also a Professor X in the band X Clan? Just a little FYI on that for you video gamers.
I did not.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I just stopped that conversation.
Yeah,
fuck that, Dave.
Don't get into a geeky conversation you can't keep up with. Come on.
I do think
I had to contribute somehow. I have no idea what to say.
I do think that Logan looks great. And did you ever read?
He really does.
Did you ever read Dave? Dave, this question is for you, Dave. Yeah. Did you ever read the solo Wolverines like back in the early 90s?
Yeah, I read a few of them. Around that time, like they just came out with like 50 different X-Men titles, and I didn't have the money to keep up, and I'm very much a completionist, so if I can't read them all, I give up. So I gave up, and I stopped reading comics at that point.
Yeah. I used to love those solo ones.
I came into the X-Men early on, and I think the pinnacle was the whole Dark Phoenix storyline, and I absolutely fucking loved that. That was like just the best time to be a comic reader, I think, anyway. So
yeah, I got super into comics during the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man years. Those were my favorite for sure.
Good time also, yes.
All right. Anyway, Johnny feels so out of place right now. He's like, can we talk about something I care about? Yeah, Johnny, do your something cool because I
have nothing. I actually have nothing because I had one and then I remembered we were doing two today. I don't know what else is cool. I gave my something cool last time.
Okay, well, I do have something cool, but this is more of a Johnny style something cool where it really only affects
well, then
us.
just involve me.
But well, it does involve you, and it involves Dave.
This is also my something cool. We planned this.
All right. So our something cool is that we're doing something really fun for the company in a few weeks, and Dave is coming out.
Oh, Dave and Logan.
Dave and Logan are both coming out. Yes.
I like my men a little bit younger.
And he likes theirs hairy and angry. Full of hair and anger. That's how he likes
the bear.
Yeah, so Dave is actually getting on a plane and coming out to visit us, and this is so exciting, and it happened really fast. I think it was pretty much he didn't want everybody to have fun without him, but it was very decisive. We were like, okay, this is when the event is, and he says okay, and we found a ticket for him, and he hasn't backed out of it, and it's been like 4 days. So,
well, I didn't back out of it because you did that thing where you weren't buying insurance. So if I did back out, it's gonna cost.
Oh, that's right. Okay, this is where
I blame your wife.
Oh, this is funny. This is actually so funny. Okay, so I got Dave to agree, and then I was just trying to find, and shopping for Dave or for anything is rough, but for a plane ticket especially, because things are either too early in the morning. I'm like, okay, so you could fly out at 6. He's like, fuck that, I'm not flying out at 6. I'm like, you could fly out at 3. Fuck that, then I'm not landing until 10. So like, I couldn't find anything for him because every single thing had a problem with it. And so finally I get him, like, it's literally the only seat I can find that satisfies all his stuff. And then there's insurance, and for like, it was something stupid, like $14 maybe.
Your wallet gets stolen.
Should have paid for it.
Like, so you can basically back out of the trip and get your money back. And so I said, should I get insurance? And then I hear, like, 2 rooms away, Cindy says, no.
Your wife's going to cost you that money when I don't show up.
Like, don't get him insurance. Then he'll have a reason not to come. Just buy the ticket. So
yeah, because just to be clear, I do strongly predict a last minute freak out. I'm thinking a night before.
I already had a freak out.
I mean,
talk about that on Worst Show Ever.
Yeah. So anyway, it was really fun. Buying a ticket for Dave, not fun. Dave coming, fun. Not getting insurance, fun, but a little bit on the edge.
It's going to be fun to find out whether Dave's paranoia / freak out or his guilt wins out. Because those are both strong forces. So the Dave's going to come and he's going to be like, I can't go, I'm freaking out. But I'm going to cost the company this money. But I can't go, I'm freaking out.
Like a Jewish Star Wars.
Oh, I want to write that. Dave, the one thing that I would find more intriguing than a Jewish Star Wars, the one and only one thing would be if there were some way that I could learn about storytelling through a medium that I already understood.
Like movies?
No, I'm thinking like the TV show Friends or other cultural anchors. If they could teach me this in some way. But there's nothing, right?
If only somebody did that. If only some writers were bold and brave enough to do something like that. But I don't know of anybody that does that.
I'm thinking like a writing instruction, like a craft book from people who already have a successful nonfiction career and would create a fun to read guide that would help improve their storytelling.
That sounds awesome. It doesn't sound like anything I would read, but it sounds awesome. What
would that book be called, Dave?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I thought so. That's what I thought. Sean, what would a book like that be called? Would it be a clever name? I can't believe
A writer's guide.
You're not supposed to bring me into the ad read.
Yeah, but see, it's a real conundrum since Dave doesn't know the stuff in the ad read a lot of times. And so it's like a solo act. I'll just hit the ball back and forth here by myself.
It's like ad masturbation.
Yes.
Well, it kind of is.
So fortunately, some trailblazing writing guys may have written a guide like that called The One with All the Writing Advice after the Friends naming convention.
Wow, that's clever of them.
You would where you okay, talk about shit because
I wish I knew co-writers.
Well, we do need to get better at these ad reads because we got to
because the whole point is to advertise our stuff, to like talk about our stuff.
Well, right. We did the horrible ad reads for 99 Designs, but they were so bad that they were entertaining. These are just so bad that I want to cry.
That they're painful. So why don't you just say what the hell we're talking about then?
Okay, so this is our topic, so we'll get into it, and we'll actually do a nice CTA at the end. But we wrote the one with all the writing advice, which is a book teaching you how to frame your stories by using pop culture conventions, already available in Friends.
Is that glory holes?
No. Do you remember the popular episode called "The One with the Glory Hole"?
Oh my God, I would love to write Friends fan fiction that was like that. Awesome. No, not erotic, just like the R-rated version that they can never do.
It'd be like the one where Ross can't get his leather pants back on, but it would involve a glory hole and getting stuck, maybe.
Okay, did you guys ever hear this rumor that actually wasn't a rumor? It was just something that was flirted around for a little tiny bit during it was after Friends went off the air.
Should I conclude the ad read before you tell the story or no?
Yeah, you probably should. So go ahead and do that.
All right. So our book, The One with All the Writing Advice, which is in the time-honored tradition of write, publish, repeat, iterate, and optimize fiction unboxed, is now it's available for pre-order as of our recording, but as of the time you're listening live on the audio, it will be live. It comes out November 1st. And the link is sterlingandstone.net/friends if you want to check that out. And we're really proud of this one. It's a really cool, breezy read, especially if you enjoy pop culture. And there are a lot of really good storytelling lessons in there that you don't have to reinvent because this juggernaut of a show that took the world by storm for 10 years already did the heavy lifting for you. So sterlingandstone.net/friends. All right, continue with your glory hole story.
Well, it's not a glory hole story. I think that might be false advertising there. No. But yeah, when Friends had gone off the air and this is I think at the time like they were making a Sex and the City movie and they were trying to get an Entourage movie going, and there was some talk that they would and Warner Brothers owns Friends, so they were talking about doing like a full on adult movie version of Friends, and that would be like the final episode. It actually may have been before that 10th season hit, and that they were thinking about that could be a way to close it. And I know that practically would never happen, but I kind of love the idea. I love the idea of seeing what like real, not that the TV show writers weren't real writers, they're great writers, but like what they could do with that structure and those characters without the boundaries of the network. I would have loved to have seen that.
Am I the only one that is imagining Sean's trip that spawned the Decoy Wallet story where he ran into that guy? Am I the only one imagining Sean in Louisiana meeting the same guy in an alley and there being a hole and the guy telling him to never
Yes, you are.
Whoa, where did that come from? Okay, I would like to dissect this for just a moment before getting on with the story because Dave was like giggling for the last 5 minutes. It was like the time when he was drawing the picture of my mom. Like he was just
that was some giddy shit right there.
Yeah, look at him. For those of you who can't see Dave right now, I'm sorry. He's literally dying over here, clutching his face, and just like I don't even understand what he was asking us.
Move along.
Yeah, I don't understand it. No. This is way too awkward to move along. So you just want to make sure that you're the only person who suddenly is imagining an erotic retelling of Sean's getting mugged story. Out of the blue for no reason whatsoever. Okay.
I'm just so confused and a little bit sad. I just don't understand.
All right. Well, let's move on then. Let's move on. So I know that. Can I move on, or are you still?
I'm trying to decipher.
Save it for a show ever.
All right. Next worst show ever, deciphering Dave. I just want to understand how he works.
I like that. Deciphering Dave. All right. So the when we say that we wrote a book that involves friends and storytelling, or more globally, the idea of using social anchors and cultural shorthand, what does that mean exactly?
Well, I think when this book was born, it was actually it's kind of apropos that this is the next episode, because the last episode we talked all about the summit, and when we finished the summit last year, we were just kind of really motivated. We loved our people, and we had just finished Iterate and Optimize not too long before, and we didn't really want to write another nonfiction book. But coming off of the summit, we were jazzed. We were like, okay, let's write something. Like, let's write something for our audience. This is exciting. And so we didn't want to just do another one of those, like another book. There's so many books on writing. There's so many books on how to launch your book, how to write your book in 30 days, how to outline your book, just on and on and on. There's a lot in that space. And we thought, if we're going to write a book, it needs to be something that only we could write, right? Or that is different from whatever else is in the marketplace. And so we just kind of put our thinking caps on, and we actually, Johnny and I specifically, use friends a lot in pretty much every story that we tell.
Enough that it's become a thing. So it was kind of hard to ignore this, because it's just part of our process. I mean, it's honestly nearly as much of a part of our process as like beats. Like, I'll be like, so what's exactly going on here? What's the mood of this? Like, I don't get it. And it's usually I don't get it, or it's something that Sean is not quite articulating in a way that he meant and that I'm supposed to understand to do the story. And they'll say, well, it's like when Ross had the copier girl in his apartment and needed to get her out before Rachel came back, and he found out that they'd been sleeping together. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Got it right away. And we use those things. Again, this book is framed around friends, but there are things like that we use all the time. Friends just happens to be the most common and strangely the most universally applicable. So for instance, in the preface of this book, one of the things that I said was, that's a comedy. And, but like Eddie, the roommate. So if you've seen Friends, then, what the heck is, the
Adam Goldberg.
Adam Goldberg, right. So he plays, Chandler's creepy roommate. And, that's, well, like single white female was basically the same situation without the humor. And so the idea of, the overbearing roommate who's just a little, you suddenly realize this guy's crazy. Sort of thing that might have
the goldfish.
Right. Like, that's a goldfish cracker. These are the sorts of things that we use that just give us that instant, like, okay, I know how to tell this story, because there's classic story structure that appears again and again in these cultural anchors, these cultural archetypes. And so that's what we use to kind of tell our stories is, well, this is the same arc as, that sort of thing.
Right. And what Johnny's saying is very true. It's not just Friends. It's all this stuff. It's all this stuff that we know backwards and forwards. I mean, everybody knows I'm your father, regardless of whether you've seen Star Wars, right? Like that's shorthand. So we were using
Beam Me Up, Scotty.
Beam Me Up, Scotty is a great one. Like we were using all of this stuff, but these are kind of like story specific. So like one that we always use anytime someone has a secret, like now there are some that we use over and over, and this is one of them. If somebody has a secret, like it's their jellyfish, right? Because of the jellyfish episode of Friends. And so, but what makes...
Do you want to explain what that is briefly in case you haven't? By the way, this is, even if you haven't seen Friends, this is still, like Logan actually did say, being serious for once, I didn't watch Friends, and I still got it.
Yeah, because the lessons are there. I mean, that's what you want. You want those takeaways that help you understand. It's shorthand to story. So very quickly in the episode of Friends, Monica gets, no, sorry. Oh, it is Monica. Monica gets stung by a jellyfish at the beach. And then, to deal with the jellyfish sting, you've got to pee on the wound, on the sting. And so Joey tries to pee on her leg and he can't. And so Chandler he
gets stage fright, and she can't do it because she can't bend the right way.
So Chandler has to pee on her leg, and then no one wants to talk about it. So it's this like deathly secret between them. And so now they have, that's their jellyfish. And so when we have secrets that like this person is keeping the secret from this person, or it's too bad to talk about. It's a jellyfish secret.
Well, but it's actually a little more granular than that. So it's not just that this occurred. It occurred in the past. And so what you see leading up is they're very awkward. Like it's they won't look at each other in the eye. This is back when they're in New York, and like Joey won't look at Monica, and it's something like when they start telling the story, Chandler's just like like he just flinches, like, no, don't say it. And so it's clear that there's something between these people, but the viewer doesn't know what it is. Like, why are they acting so weird? They're not normally this way. And then it's the deep, dark, painful secret is sort of the trope here. What is it that occurred that we shall never speak of this again is what this is. And so that specifically, we actually use this in Judgment. I tell this story in the one with all the writing advice because there's something that happened. Judgment is the 5th book in the Alien Invasion series. There's something that happened between the 4th and the 5th book that the reader doesn't actually know until like 3/4 through the book. It's just this weird thing. Like they refer to it and, well, that isn't going to happen because of what happened last time. And the reader doesn't know, and it's a mystery box. And so that's sort of where this is.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good takeaway too, is that when you're looking at cultural shorthand, this stuff works because people understand it. So they're patterns. And when you're looking for stories and you want to tell your own version of that story, you have to lean into the pattern, or you at least have to understand that it's okay to lean into the pattern. So I actually want to ask Dave, because you're very like hyper focused on that when you're writing. You want to write something original. You want to write something that hasn't been done before. So how do you feel about this kind of thing where it's cultural shorthand and you're pulling from here, but then telling it your own way? Do you think that's helpful and it kind of gives you something to work from, or does that distract you for your type of writing?
If we're both on the same page, then yeah, I think it is useful for people writing together. I'd probably have different references and Friends references. I would probably have like Better Call Saul or something. I don't know.
Right, but it's this. That's
to
the
be
same
clear,
thing.
we're not making the reference. That is worth mentioning.
Yeah, and it's actually, I would say something like Better Call Saul is harder, because what makes the Friends, it's because it's so big, right? So Better Call Saul is a really good example of two writers working together and wanting to be on the same collaborative page because they have the same working vocabulary. But what we're trying to do with the Friends book is more like, here are cultural touchstones and storytelling patterns that have already been proven and are effective and
are familiar.
So you can use them because people will automatically plug into them if it's the same pattern but in a different context. So it's almost like the argument that we've been making about obligatory scenes, and you have to have these scenes. If you're writing to genre, then you have to have those obligatory scenes. But if you have the obligatory scenes, how can you make them relevant to the story that you're telling so that it feels fresh to the reader? So this is the same kind of thing where you're looking at, okay, so there's that pattern. So it's patterns instead of obligatory scenes. Here's this pattern. I know it works because so many people laughed at it before. Now I'm going to change the context, but take the same pattern and put it over here.
Yeah, I want to put that in order a little bit. I want to bring this together because this is kind of like, okay, well, cultural shorthand, whatever. Here's the reason this matters. So people like to see the same thing again and again. They like to hear the same story again and again. We act like that's not true, but there's a reason that there's the hero's journey. There's a reason that there are obligatory scenes. There are reasons that you do tend to see the same book over and over again, especially in certain genres. It's like, is it going to be another love story? Is it going to be another invasion story, or like we've seen these things again? And so, but there's a line to walk where you don't want to repeat the story. You want to have the same feel, which is what Sean said about patterns. So the reason that we wrote this book and the reason that this sort of thing is important is that if you understand what those patterns are that have been proven successful and that people have seen out there, then you can mimic those patterns and those tropes with your own stuff, which is what Sean said about using the pattern but not the actual stuff. Then the work will instantly be more relatable because these are the things that you expect to happen. There are, I actually gave this example in the book and I forgot that I did. So if you have, if anybody's seen How I Met Your Mother, so there's Barney and Robin. Sorry to spoil, there's, How I Met Your Mother for you guys, but eventually there's a point where they get together. And Barney is the snarky, like, womanizer. He's Neil Patrick Harris playing Barney Stinson.
He's Neil Patrick Harris at his best.
At his best.
So good.
And then there's this part where he's like suddenly really vulnerable.
Oh, it wasn't Doogie Howser? That wasn't
Doogie Howser. Wasn't his best. I do know a guy, my college roommate looked just like Doogie Howser.
So did my best friend.
There you go. We should get them together. It's probably the same guy.
He's dead.
Oh, well, not the same guy then. Anyway,
I bet you he's not even dead. Dave just wanted to like bring everyone down.
Maybe you should laugh at him like the last time that happened.
David's giddy today. I don't understand.
But my point is that there's a jarring thing that happens in that when they get together, and he's suddenly this different guy, and the reason that happens is because you as a viewer, I mean, if you agree with me, you as a viewer, in your head, you know how the story is supposed to happen. And so it's predictable. Like, it's like, I know what's going to happen going forward. And then it doesn't. And you're like, that doesn't seem right. I don't want to give any spoilers on this, partially because I don't know them. But Sean's been telling me in season 5 of Parenthood, there's some shit that just doesn't make sense. And I know it's going to be exactly the same thing because you as a viewer,
that season makes me angry. I love that show. I do not like that.
You understand the pattern that's supposed to happen, and then it doesn't. So that's what this book is. Like, that's why we wrote this, is because it's the patterns that are supposed to happen.
Right, and I think those
dissonance that people feel, but they can't quite put their finger on.
Yes, absolutely. And those patterns are really worth paying attention to, because when you go to a movie and it's missing those scenes, then it's like how many of us have gone to a movie and we've left the theater and we don't even know why a movie didn't quite click with us? We can't explain it.
And you say it that way. It just didn't. It didn't have something.
Yeah. Now, I used to be able to. Well, I've always really liked movies, so I've always like talked about movies. But that is something common. Like a person will have a hard time articulating exactly why. And when I used to get out of the movies, and like my dad actually nagged me when I was in high school. He really wanted me to write a movie review column for the Press Telegram, which would have been my first writing thing ever. But that sounded like work. So it was like, I'd rather just talk about them. But I've always really liked talking about movies and like breaking them apart. But I think I do a much better job now than I did back then, because I was focused on different things then. And now that I'm, studying story structure as much as I am as part of my job, I'm looking at things differently. And it's easier to see why a movie doesn't click with an audience. It's because it's missing those scenes, or it's getting those scenes wrong. And we're so wired to see story in a certain way that when the patterns aren't there, then it's a pattern interruption. We're not getting what we paid for or what we expected. And so really paying attention to the patterns that work, but then making them interesting and relevant to your characters and your story and all of that is just a fantastic way to write, because you're feeding the creative inside yourself, but you're also giving the reader what she expects, what she's anticipating. And what I love about the Friends Project is that these are all, I mean, yes, there are people, and we've seen it. We've even seen it in our early reviews from the book, from a few people who, look, I've never actually watched Friends before, but I still got the story lessons. And that's the point. It's like, these are patterns that work. And here's how we've used them. Here's how you can use them. And here's what they mean. So it's not like we don't just go through, 10 seasons of Friends and pick out random scenes that we thought were funny and explain why they're funny. It's more about the patterns that they work because of this.
Right. So let's be a little more specific here. So it was a little tricky trying to figure out how to organize this book, but we did it by the lessons. Like, what are the major categories of things that writers need to think about when they're writing, when they're telling stories, especially using these cultural shorthand things. So the first category is knowing your characters. Like, what are the things that you need to keep in mind about characters? And I have some favorite ones in there. We can go back and give some specific examples so people know what we're talking about. Balancing your characters and making them feel real, which is slightly different from knowing your characters, because it's about, I actually gave the example in the last episode of SPP about the FBI agent in Mr. Robot. And there were some balancing things in there that I thought were cool. Creating believable relationships, which is going to be most poignant for like something like a romance, but is still poignant for everything else, just in a different way. Some storytelling tricks. There were some really cool, like, different ways that they framed things in Friends that you can apply to any genre or any writing project. And then a section that we called Growing Your Character's Untapped Potential. And actually the Jellyfish one is in there, but it's like, what are the things that those were the really moving scenes and why they were moving, although the Jellyfish isn't very moving, but like Chandler in the Box was a scene that I really enjoyed in there. Let me mention the one that in the Knowing Your Characters, just so people can know what the hell we're talking about here, is there's a scene in, okay, so anybody who's seen Friends knows who Joey is, right? Like Joey's the guy who, when he's...
Logan's actually only watched Joey.
There you go. He's only watched the Joey show. So Joey's the guy who, when he's giving Rachel the tour of his apartment, he goes, there's the napkin, and that's where I keep the pizza. Like that's part of the tour. And then there's the scene where they have the cheesecake. Chandler and Rachel are fighting over the cheesecake.
Oh my God, I love that episode.
And Joey comes up to see them eating cheesecake off the floor, and then Joey like just watches them, and then he pulls a fork out of his pocket and sits down and goes, okay, now what are we eating? So that's who Joey is. But there's a scene in one of the very first episodes where it's the one where his dad and he discovers his dad has a mistress. And so they wanted a thoughtful scene between father and son, and they needed Joey to be doing something. So he's making sauce. He's chopping garlic. It's like he's in Goodfellas. He's chopping garlic and he's making sauce. And there's this very...
And he's like tasting it as he goes.
Right. There's a very cliche Italian thing at the end where he like hands the spoon out to his dad. He doesn't say, it's very like cliche Italian, the whole thing. And his father like makes fun of it. Like, what? You aren't going to crush the garlic? You're going to chop it? You got to crush it.
And then 4 seasons later,
not Joey.
Right. Joey's looking for old donuts on top of the refrigerator. Like it's the same character, but it's doing something with it. But I think what really I think is interesting about these patterns when you find them is that it's not, Friends is a comedy and it's a network comedy. So there are a lot of restrictions there. It's a very specific type of writing. And yet the situations and the patterns, I actually feel like it doesn't matter what you're writing. There's something there that you can you can take. If you're writing a sci-fi book or a fantasy or whatever, it doesn't matter. A lot of this stuff is relationship based. It's situation based. And so these are actions and reactions. And as long as you can, transplant the actions and reactions to a different setting and think intelligently. I mean, this is not a copy and paste situation. Right? It's thinking intelligently about, okay, I'm going to take this scenario and put it over here and shape it a little bit and come up with this new thing. And that's, I think, the joy in learning something new is you shouldn't walk away with, okay, I have these 5 to 20 new things I can try. It's teaching you to look at things differently so that when you watch a show like Friends, you're watching it as a critical observer and thinking about how you can apply that to the art that you're creating.
Do you have any favorites that you want to pull out that teach an important storytelling lesson? I think that all the shortcuts that we can have as writers, the easier things get for us, because then we don't have to reinvent from scratch.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with the easy, obvious thing here, which is the relationship between Ross and Rachel. That push and pull, that tension. It's constantly there. There's so much push and pull between them that it makes subtext really easy in their relationship. So when, Ross is saying something, pretty much anything post season 3 after they do their, after they were on a break, and then for everything after that, it's like when Ross is saying something, is he saying it for his benefit? Is he saying it for Rachel's benefit? There's a lot of little subtle mind games, that are played there. But I think the whole entire show is just kind of anchored around their relationship. And, that's both good and bad because it meant that it dragged on for a long time and they had to do some maneuvering within the, structure of the 6 friends to make that last as long as they did. But having said that, that doesn't change the patterns, and it is the workable patterns. Let me think about an actual favorite scene.
Yeah, I'll give another one. So I think this one is particularly relevant if you're telling a love story, but it's more globally applicable. So here's what I'm talking about. If you've in season 1, I want to say, Chandler and not Chandler, Ross and Rachel, it becomes clear that they're supposed to be together, right? So there's in the very first episode, Ross asks if Rachel, well, would you ever, maybe go out with me if I were to ask, like very, very hesitantly in the beginning of the very first episode. So that establishes the beginning of their arc. Like Ross and Rachel, if you're paying attention, the pattern is those two need to end up together, which, by the way, in the final episode of the show, people were like, will they get back together? We don't know. We don't know if Ross and Rachel are going to get back together, because will she fly to Paris or will she stay? If you're paying attention, they damn well better have gotten together, because the whole show was about it. And
I thought it was brave when they had him kill her.
Right. I know, Dave.
Such a different direction.
And the Pedo Bear thing was totally unexpected.
2 weeks in a row with Pedo Bear.
but honestly, just to be clear on this, like that's the sort of thing, that's a contract with the reader, or the viewer. You can't, or in your case, the reader, you can't violate that. Like, they had to get back together. That's the pattern. But in season 1, we meet Paolo. And Paolo is this Italian hunky guy who my wife doesn't understand the appeal of at all, by the way. Like, she's like, why did they have him as the hunky guy? But whatever. And he's there as one particular thing. There's one very clear purpose to Paolo. And if you're paying attention, you'll see it. It's to establish the difference between Ross and what Rachel thinks she wants. Like, that's why he's there. And if you see that, then you see the purpose of Paolo is to just be an obstacle, but more importantly, a point of comparison. Because without Paolo, she might think that, well, she continued to want that kind of relationship. She wanted to be swept away. And it took her going through him, and then Paolo, cheats on her. And she's like, no, I didn't want that. Passion fades. I want a relationship.
I really like the example of Monica and Richard. So Monica and Richard, this is just great dramatic tension. And it's one of those things where everyone's right, no one wins. Right. So Richard and Monica have this great relationship. He's definitely older than her. What's the age difference? Do you know off the top of your head? It's a lot, right?
It's a whole person who can drink older than you. Remember that?
Right.
They're 21 years apart.
Yeah. Right. Okay, that's right. It's a whole person that can drink older than you. So he's
I love that I knew that off the top of my head.
No, that's great. That's why we're qualified to write this book, apparently. So she's and they love each other. They have a great relationship. And at the point where they meet, we've seen Monica fumble through a few relationships. So we know that Richard is good for her. He's grounding for her. But what else do we know about Monica? We know that she really, really, really wants to have a baby. Like, really, really wants it. Like, it's the writers had established that very much in the first season, that Monica wants to have a baby. Like, that's a big deal to her. So they introduce Richard, and they let us know that he's the right person for her. Like, he's the right man for her. She's happy with him. He's happy with her. But then they get to this point where they realize that Richard doesn't want to start over. Like, he doesn't want to have another kid. Like, he's at the point where he's having grandkids. So this doesn't make sense to him. And she's willing to bend, and he's willing to bend. Like, maybe I don't want kids. And he's thinking, oh, maybe I could start over. But the truth is that really they're not right for each other, because they're the right couple at the wrong time. And that's really painful. Like, that's a painful thing. And I think most people have been in a situation like that before in their lives, where it's this really great thing, and it's not the right time. And so I love that. I think that this show did that really, really well, where you really felt for both of them, and you could see how they would make a compromise, but a compromise like that really makes sense in the moment. It won't necessarily make sense 5 or 10 years later. And then you have a child together, or you don't have a child together, and no one would win. So I like how they handled that a lot.
As far as one of the things that I thought was kind of cool was that I called these, it's so not an ensemble, like that's the word I use. You called them a bottle episode, and there are a couple of them in Friends. And I think it's a really interesting storytelling device. Do you want to talk about that? Like the one where they all turn 30 and the one where no one's ready?
The one where no one's ready is not just one of my favorite Friends episodes. It's actually one of my favorite episodes of TV. The one where no one's ready is if you don't watch Friends, it's basically set up like a stage play almost. There's no it's a single setting. It all takes place in Monica's apartment, and Ross has a speaking gig at the university, and he's gonna like perform, and he just wants it's very important to him, and Ross can be kind of anal, and no one's taking it seriously, and they all have to get ready, and there's just shenanigans happening. Monica's calling Richard, actually. And Rachel, that's the big thing with Rachel, has to get dressed, and she's taking forever, and then she and Ross get in a fight, and he has to drink the fat. And it's a great episode with lots of funny one-liners, but structurally it's amazing, because in a show like Friends, you have to have every single character needs their few minutes. So what makes Friends like both the phenomenon that it was and kind of a difficult show to write, I imagine, is that you got 6 main characters, and in each show they have to have their storyline. And you have to check in with them in each one. And if you look at all of the Friends episodes, they all follow that pattern, which is not easy to do. You only have 22 minutes here, right? And so in that episode, everyone gets their own storyline. Everyone is in the same confined space, and they're just kind of like rotating very quickly in and out of each other. And I actually think that episode alone is worth studying. If you have Netflix, you could get Friends on demand. I don't know which season that is, but it's called The One Where No One Is Ready, and it really is worth watching and paying attention to closely.
Yeah, and the one where they all turn 30 is similar. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like, which actually that in itself is great, the naming convention, which is why the book is called The One With All the Writing Advice, if you're not picking up on that.
What's funny, too, is it took us a while to come up with that title, and once we did, it's just so stupidly obvious.
Is the one where they all turn 30, that you get a little vignette of each time, when each of them turns 30, and it tells you a lot about the characters. Like just that a character facing crisis is where you learn a lot about them. One of the ones that sometimes you need to say something about a character, and you can't. I mean, I think we've all run into this as writers. You can't just say, well, so and so is a very brave person. Like you need to do it through action. You need to have them face situations. And so we used the where Rachel sings Copacabana, which is, again, I believe a first season thing. So just if you don't know the story, Rachel is when she first shows up, she's a spoiled little rich girl. She actually shows up in her wedding dress because she just ran out of her wedding. And
great opening too.
Yeah, she's just kind of very bratty, and she just thinks of herself. But her running out on her wedding was like this moment of realization, like maybe I'm not that person, or as she says in the show, maybe I'm not a shoe.
I'm not a shoe.
I'm not a shoe. I'm a hat, or something like that.
Gravy boat.
Because it's of course fashion metaphors for Rachel at the beginning. But then there's in that season she learns that her ex-fiance Barry has been basically screwing around with her maid of honor the whole time,
Mindy.
And so who was Jennifer Grey, I think.
It was Jennifer Grey, yeah.
But it was after her nose job, and she just looks like a different person. But anyway, so they invite her to the wedding, which is or to be, I think, the maid of honor again, right? Which is really
right. In the Pepto-Bismol dress.
In the Pepto-Bismol dress. And so it's this really, really super awkward moment, because it's still going to be Barry. It's still going to be all his family. And so she faces this crisis of, is she going to go to the wedding and just be embarrassed or not? And so she decides she's going to be brave, and you learn something about her character right there. It's like, okay, she's going to do this. She's going to wear the ridiculous pink dress with the big frilly sleeves. She's going to face these people. And then when she's walking down the aisle, she's got the dress like sticks, and so her ass is hanging out. So she's walking down the aisle with her ass hanging out at the wedding. And so she's just in this humiliating situation, and they start to poke at her. Like the best man makes a toast, and he says, there are very few people who would have the guts to come back, but even fewer who do it with their ass hanging out. And he makes something, he makes the same toast, and they says, what? She did, I forget what that one is. Well, whatever. So, but then she could just run away. Like that's what's supposed to happen. You think that she's going to cry and run away because they're just beating up on her. But instead, she goes to the band and she takes the mic and she sings Copacabana, because back in her history, she tells the story, she had to sing in front of the whole school and she got really embarrassed. And so this is Rachel like claiming her, she's owning her own embarrassment. She's like, I'm going to be in control of this. I'm going to be as embarrassed as I possibly can on my own terms instead of letting you do it to me. And that establishes that character for the rest of the episode, the rest of the season. Right.
And so what about that one? I don't know the name of the episode, but it's the one where it's the one with the videotape.
It's right? Called the one with the videotape.
Okay, right. So the one with the videotape. Love that naming convention. So awesome. So the one with the videotape is a great example of dramatic irony. So we, as the viewer, know something that Rachel doesn't. So the way this all goes down, this is a late episode, maybe season 8 or something. And Rachel already has her baby Emma, and or no, she doesn't. But she's pregnant. She's pregnant. Yeah, she's pregnant.
No, I don't think she does. I think this is earlier than you think it is.
Is it?
I think so.
So all we know is that they've slept together.
Oh, that videotape. That is late. It is late.
Right. Which videotape do you think I'm talking about?
I thought it was the prom video.
Oh, no. This is
okay, so go ahead. Ignore what I said. It is what you said. I think she's pregnant, or she just had the...
Yeah, for sure. She has to be pregnant, but she has the baby.
So the dramatic irony lesson, yes. Okay, this is...
Right. So the dramatic irony is that we know... Okay, so there's this whole story that Rachel tells this story. It's Joey's story originally about, when he wants to sleep with a girl, he tells this story about backpacking in Europe. Right. And
the magic story you use when you want to have sex.
Right. It is the magic story. He teaches it to Ross. Of course, Ross is a dork about it. Doesn't use it right. And so on this video, we're waiting. We're waiting the whole entire episode to see what's on this video, because the video is apparently Rachel and Ross having sex and what led up to it.
And Ross was recording himself telling the story when she came in, and then he forgot the camera was there.
Right. So
he got it on video.
Right. So he wasn't even trying to record them having sex, but Rachel was like, she's infuriated that he did record it. Anyway, the answer is here. And so we know all the background for this story. And so there's this moment where Rachel is just so full of herself, like in the best Rachel way, where she just knows that Ross is going to get super, super moted and like, oh my God, watch this. And they put the video on, and because the whole argument is who initiated sex. And Rachel is saying that Ross initiated it, and Ross is saying, nope, it was Rachel. And he's like, I have a videotape to prove it, right? Which makes him look like a monster. And so they're watching the tape. And Rachel says, so one time I'm backpacking in Europe, and all the friends go, oh, because they know that she was initiating it, even though he made the first move. She actually made the first move. She just didn't know. But anyway, the whole thing that that story, and you know what it meant.
And you had to plan ahead. Like the writers had to tell that story at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, it's really well seated, and the punchline is really great, and that kind of thing it's super. And if you go into, like, you can watch that episode, just enjoy it as a fan. But if you look at it as a storyteller and you see how an episode like that is constructed, and you can take it apart and use it for your own, there's a lot of comedy in that episode, but there doesn't have to be. It could be, it could be a thriller where somebody is telling a story to get out of something, and then they're using it in a different context, and it's their tell. They're giving themselves away.
The Usual Suspects did that at the reveal, where you learn that like Kobayashi was the name of the China or something. Like they had to seed those things.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of like looking at the construction of that kind of work. And yes, they use it for comedic effect, but I believe these are patterns that are...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Danielle is actually asking, how would you do that in the book? She said just using different POVs. I would do it in one of two ways. I would either have a third person, like an omniscient, so that they know everything. Because Friends is, TV by nature is pretty much always told omniscient, right? Like it's just...
Yeah, it has to be kind of.
Yeah. But you could also have alternating POVs. The important thing is that we've done this. We've done dramatic irony where and that actually got really, really hard. Beam season 3 is thick with dramatic irony. It's really hard to keep track of. But the important thing to remember is you have to work backwards and say, so if I were writing that episode, I'd say there needs to be a way that Rachel thinks she won, but that everyone else is going to know that she didn't win. She was the one who did initiate. And what could that be? And I can just imagine the writers sitting around, oh, what if there's a story? What if there was something she could do that everybody else would be able to see? Oh, that's what you do when you want to have sex. And you just work backward from there. So in a book, I would say you just have to make sure that the one character doesn't know and the other one does. You could do it either way.
Yeah, well, POV changes really, really help with that. So, okay, I know we'll need to close out soon. But another one, this is a little bit like the Monica Richard thing. It's ending a relationship where it's believable and no one gets shortchanged. So I love how they handled the end of Emily and Ross's relationship, because so Ross and Rachel have their whole back and forth thing all through the first several seasons, and then Ross meets this girl Emily, who is the niece of her personal shopper boss, Mr. Waltham. And it's she's coming in from London, and he ends up kind of like taking her out because Rachel is trying to hook up with Joshua, and so she asks Ross to just like
Joshua
to take this date for her, basically, and then they go to see Deflate a Mouse, and so they have a really good time.
Look at how into this Dave is.
I know, I'm just noticing that. I expect the popcorn. He's actually furious in Slack. You guys just don't even know it. He's furious in Slack because his family is home right now. Anyway, Ross totally falls for Emily, and it's this whirlwind affair. Like, it happens over a few episodes where all of a sudden she has to go back to London, and they realize they should get married. And so we've never seen, at this point in the story, we've never seen Emily be a bitch. Like, we've never seen any reason for their relationship to be over. And yet it has to be, because this is the finale. we know Ross isn't moving to London. Like, we know that he's not getting married. We know that
got
Ross,
a kid in the States. Like, yeah.
Right. And we also know that him and Rachel are supposed to end up together. So we know that he's not going to actually marry Emily, but he's sitting there with an audience and a preacher and the do you take? That's all happening. And we, as the viewer, are watching this like, how are they going to get out of this? And you can't, like, all of a sudden have Emily do something totally out of character and just start ranting at Ross or something to prove that she's, this horrible person, because that's the lazy way to write. You have to figure out.
I had a terrorist come in and kill her.
That would have been much better than what they did. But they didn't do Dave's genius plan. What they did instead was they had Rachel show up, because originally she didn't come because she thought it would be weird. But then she comes at the last minute and kind of jars Ross a little bit because he's surprised to see her. So, spoiler alert for the season 4 finale of Friends. If you haven't seen it, sorry, it was 20 years ago. But when he says, I take the Emily, Ross says, I take the Rachel. So he says the wrong girl's name at his wedding.
And when you were watching it, were you like a woman watching a go, oh my God, no, he didn't.
I did. Actually, that episode, I was, it was like I had just started dating Cindy, and she was on a business trip, and we watched Friends live together. We were on the phone together during that episode because it was the finale. And we watched.
Wait, hold on. I'd like to pause for Dave to laugh at Sean about that.
Yeah, well, we wanted to watch the finale together, but she was on a business trip, so we watched it, and we both did gasp together. I will never forget that moment. So yes, like it's. I think the writers really surprised us in the best possible way that showed honor to the reality.
There's a really important sub lesson here, so writers pay attention, and it's that if Rachel went there to break up the wedding, that's why she did it. She got on a transatlantic flight to go and break up the wedding. And if she had gone there and broken up the wedding, if she had gone and declared her love for Ross, then that fucks everything up, because then it's really hard to get behind Rachel because she's just broken them up and maybe they're supposed to be together. So in order to make sure that the viewers stay on Rachel's side, she stays silent.
Yeah.
She comes there and she's ready. She walks in. She actually pushes past people to get in there, and she's gonna do it. She's gonna tell him, and then she sees something. Right? Does she just see him together, or they're already in the ceremony? There's something that changes her mind, and she quietly sits down, and that's really important because she was supposed to break it up, but by having her retire and okay, I'm giving up. This is gonna happen, and then having Ross be the one who blew it. That's perfect because then the viewer isn't against anybody, which is
and Ross also like Ross at this point is kind of he's not.
We think that he's actually in love with Emily at that point.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a slip, and he's a doofus, and we just like he does this awful thing, and yet we feel sorry for him. And it's so masterfully done for what is ultimately a silly sitcom, and that's the point. Like they accomplish this stuff so well. That's why it's a great source for these patterns. And if you look at too, this is a good closing note, but it's like one of the things that Friends did just remarkably well, if not better than anything else, is that they took these cardboard stereotypes, like the spoiled girl, like the Italian, like, ladies' man, and they did something with them. So this is such a great example of the obligatory scene, but make it fresh, right? But these are the obligatory, tropey, cast of cardboard characters. This was basically a casting call for here's what 6 attractive people like in New York, like let's get them together. And yet over the course of the show, they never retreated from who they are. There would be different nuance, like Joey looking for donuts on top of the fridge instead of cooking sauce, and they definitely would shape them. Like Phoebe got unreasonably bitchy there at the very end. I never quite understood that for her character, but there were things that happened. But overall, they took these very cardboard characters and made us love them, gave them enough dimension that we cared about them every single week.
I have 2 final things I'd like to mention before we close. One is that Sean mentioned the idea of having somebody do a bad thing, and this is actually what I started to say about if Rachel had spoiled things. Remember that we have a couple who their major crisis point is when Ross cheats, and so when you have something that's that bad, especially in this large love story, you have to do things that build equity within the characters, and that's one of the things that if you watch all 10 seasons of this show, you'll see the little ways in which they work to get the viewer on Ross's side. And you can't really forgive what Ross did, but they got as close as they possibly could. So the fact that he hooks up when he's drinking and he doesn't really remember. The fact that he thinks that Rachel is already cheating. So they already set up this whole relationship with Rachel and Mark, where Ross is pretty I know he's jealous and this is maybe a little unreasonable, but it's not really that unreasonable for him.
But it's also what they did that's remarkable there is that even if he is being unreasonable, we believe that he feels that way. We understand the chain of events that made him feel this way or engage in these behaviors. And we may not agree with those behaviors, but we understand his line of reasoning.
And the last one, which I'll close on, is just kind of a fun, quick one. And that's that, we talk about Save the Cat. And do you know what I'm going to say? So Save the Cat is, if you don't know this, like if you want to say what the character's good, even if he's going to be evil in the book, then you have him quote unquote save a cat, do something nice early on because you're like, okay, I know that guy saved the cat. There's a moment where they needed to break Phoebe up. And when she's dating Michael Rappaport, Officer Gary, and I don't know if they just decided this relationship wasn't going anywhere. They were just trying to be funny. And so they just said, what can we do that's like the definitive anti-saving a cat thing for this show in this context? So there's this moment where they're just waking up. They just moved in together. It's this beautiful sunny morning.
Morning's here.
Right. And there's, a bird chirping outside. And it's just and if you know Phoebe, like it's a very beautiful morning. She's waking up with a guy beside her. And Gary's like, hang on a second. And he's a cop. So he pulls his gun out of his holster, just shoots the bird. And it's just a moment where like, okay, well that happened. So that's a real world example of saving the cat. All right. So that's it. I could go on and on. I actually have more, but we're at time. So if you're interested in this, the one with all the writing advice is the follow-up to our other nonfiction books. So if you like reading our books about writing and in this case style, like Fiction Unboxed, this is the closest to Fiction Unboxed, but it's also the only style manual we've done, the only style book we've done.
It's also really, really readable. That's probably the number one thing we've heard so far on this is just, wow, I just breezed right through that. You can read it in a sitting, a longer sitting, but a sitting. And I think there's takeaways here for every single author, but I think if you've watched Friends, I think you want to read this book. I think you'll have takeaways there that you'll have for the rest of your writing life. Yeah.
So it does come out November 1st. It's already got 24 reviews. We sent it out to ARC people and to go look at their reviews. They're very good. So I'm very flattered by that. But if you're interested in this, it's sterlingandstone.net/friends. This is an Amazon exclusive for now. We'll change that after 30 days, but that's where it goes. And so check it out. I would also mention that the Smarter Artist Summit tickets are on sale. We mentioned that on the last episode we recorded. So if you are interested in joining us in Austin, Texas, on the 26th and 27th of April, make sure you get your ticket, smarterartistsummit.com, because I don't get the impression they're going to last long. It's already half sold out. So that's it. Any other things to add before we go? There's less than 100 tickets left for that, by the way.
No, but this was fun.
All right, and I know Dave had a blast, so that's the important thing.
Yeah, he looks like a party.
He's having fun back there. All right, so this has been Self-Publishing Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Peace out.